Converting fractions and decimals. In order to convert fractions and decimals, we have to understand place values. So here's a place value chart. I'm going to read the numbers in the place value chart. 0 and 4 tenths. I'm reading that as tenths because the 4 is in the tenths place. 0 and 8 hundredths. I'm reading that 8 hundredths because it is in the 8 is in the hundredths place. 6 and 25 hundredths. I read this as 25 hundredths because the 5, the last number, is in the hundredths place. I could also think of this as if we have a 0 here, I could think about it as 20 hundredths and 5 hundredths together. That's 25 hundredths. That's another way that you can think about that number. So let's go ahead and convert 0 and 4 tenths into a fraction. Well, the 4 is in the tenths place. So the place value determines your denominator. So my denominator is going to be 10. Then the numerator is the number that's in the place value chart. So the 4 is in the place value chart, so that is going to be my numerator. But don't forget, we got to simplify. So we're going to divide the numerator and denominator both by 2, and we get 2/5. So 4 tenths can be written as a fraction as 2/5. Let's look at 0 and 8 hundredths. Well, let's look at where the number is in the place value chart. It's in the hundreds. So my denominator is 100. The number in the hundreds place is 8, so that's going to be my numerator. And we can't forget to simplify. We can divide both by 4, and we get 2/25. So our fraction is 2/25. Let's look at the one where we have a number in the ones place. So we have 6 in the ones place, and that is before the decimal. Therefore, the 6 will become before the fraction. Now we have to look. Remember, we had two numbers, but it's going to look at the last number in the place value chart. And the 5's in the hundreds place. So the denominator will be 100. And this number behind the decimal is 25. So that is going to be our numerator. Don't forget, we can simplify. We can divide both by 25, and we'll get 1/4. Now, right now this is a mixed number, but to make it into its full fractional form, we can multiply the denominator times the whole number and add it into the numerator and keep the denominator the same. That's called an improper fraction. So here's the full fractional form. Here's the mixed number of 6 and 25 hundredths. All right, now let's convert this fraction, 7 tenths, into a decimal. So we want to check, is your denominator in my place value chart? So what does that mean? Is this 10 in the place value chart somewhere? This tenths. Remember, it's fractional pieces. Yes, it's right here. So I can take my numerator and write it in the tenths place. But we don't put 0.7. We always put a number in front, and if there is no number, we put a 0. So this is 0 and 7 tenths read as a decimal. 7 tenths, 0 and 7 tenths. Let's look at another one. Convert 12 hundredths into a decimal. Well, this time we have 100 as the denominator, so I look for it in the place value chart. There it is. So my last number has to fall in that hundredths place. So that 2 will fall in the hundredths place, the 1 will fall in the tenths, and don't forget that 0 in front. So it's 0 and 12 hundredths. All right, but what if we have a fraction where the denominator is not one that's in the place value chart? Well, we could write a fraction that's equivalent that has a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000, because those are our place values here. So let's go ahead and convert this fraction into an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100, because I know I can get 20 to 100. I couldn't get it to 10 because I'd have to divide this by 10, and it wouldn't go evenly. So I chose 100. So what do I do to 20 to get to 100? Times 5. So I'll do that to the numerator. 3 times 5 is 15. So my fraction is 15 hundredths. Now I can write that in my place value chart. The 5 is in the hundredths place because that's the last number in the numerator. And then don't forget that 0 in front. So it is 0 and 15 hundredths. All right, now what if we find a fraction that we're like, I really don't know if the denominator can go to a 10, 100, or 1,000, and I'm really stuck? Well, our last option we can do is long division. And what we can say is this is 1 divided by 8. So to write that out in a long division, 1's on the inside, which is the numerator. 8's on the outside, which is the denominator. Now, I wrote 0.00 because I know that this is going to be a decimal. Remember, because this is less than 1. So 8 does not go into 1, so I put a 0 and bring the decimal point up. Now I think of it as 8 into 10, and it goes 1 time. Now I subtract 8 and I get 2. Bring down your 0, 8 into 20 goes 2 times. And 8 times 2 is 16, so I subtract 16 and I'm left with 4. Now if there's no more numbers, but you still have numbers here left over, you have to add a 0 and bring it down. So 8 into 40, 5 times. Now I'm completely done. So my decimal is 0 and 125 thousandths. Now I read it that way because the last number would be in the thousands place if I put this number in my place value chart. So I could always use long division as a last resort, or it may have to be used in a question similar to this one. Convert 1/3 into a decimal. There is no way to get 3 to 100, 1,000, or 10,000, so I'm going to go ahead and divide it. So I'm going to continue to do what I did before. So 3 times 3 is 9, subtract to get 1, bring down the 0, 3 into 10, 3, subtract 9, get 1, and then bring down the 0, it's 10, and then, wait, what is happening here? Oh no, it's repeating. It's never going to stop. It's just going to keep going 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. We call these repeating decimals. And we have a fun little way to write these ones so we can remember them. So in order to let somebody know that that 3 is going to keep repeating, we write a line over it. So this is read as 0 and 3 tenths, but that 3 tenths is repeating, so it's going to keep going, 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 going. And that is how we would write 1/3 as a decimal. But what do we call a decimal that doesn't repeat? We call them terminating decimals. So the ones before that we wrote were terminating decimals. That's converting fractions and decimals.